see when I put my hand up to my face. Okay, it's like 6 or 7 seconds. That's not that bad. Um, Sweet. All right, sweet. So we're 5, 6 minutes over. I'm sorry for taking so long. Um, let's get let's get started. Um, cool. So what's up? I'm Aaron. I run RVC with the help of a couple of really cool mods. They're great. And I really like doing these skill workshops slash seminars. Um, so just like this is, I guess, a plug. We're doing a circuit, and there's a whole bunch of announcements both on the Reddit and on my Twitter and in the Discord. Um, and this cool graphic was made by 17 cats stacked in a trench coat. Um, so yeah, so like the way it works is we have a bunch of online ladder tournaments, and at the end we're gonna have one big Swiss tournament that costs a couple bucks to get in. Um, and it'll be really cool and fun. So here's sort of our timeline of events. Um, and yeah, so the first one's tomorrow in about 25 hours from now. I can't play in it because I think I made the other tournament. Um, but it'll be a lot of fun, and you should check it out. So, uh, so yeah, so I like to do these little skill workshop seminars, instead of like doing like coaching or really just like making teams and then giving them out. And so why is this important to me? So and I guess that like kind of like the question to start out with is like how would you describe Pokemon to a friend? Um, so like competitive Pokemon. So you might have heard this a couple ways. Like I've certainly said this a couple ways. Like you might call it like chess, but it's chess but with poker too. And maybe you say rock paper scissors if you got like unlucky or something. It's just poker and rock paper scissors, and that's sort of like how you play. Um, and that's all well and good, but there's more going on in this game than just those things. Um, those like the two skills that we have are team building and battling. And all of those sum up battling pretty well, right? Like I would like, that's that's kind of how the battling works. But how do you make a team? Is that a technical skill? Um, does that remind you of chess or poker or rock paper scissors? Um, it's not so clear to me that it is. And here's the sort of like the point that I'm gonna drive home here. Is like what makes a good Pokemon team, right? Like what's good? Well, that answer is going to change over time. So, you see, I made this little graph of Colossal's usage on Showdown over time, and this is at the start of the format. And you might have said, like, I don't know if Colossal is a good Pokemon. And other people might have said that too, and it doesn't really win any tournaments or anything. But then Players Cup 2 happens, and all of a sudden Colossal is on 8% of the teams that you're going to face on Showdown. That's actually a pretty big deal. It's like 1 in 12 games. And so people might say at that point, oh, it's a good team. Um, but that's a result of social dynamics. Like that's people deciding to play Colossal. Colossal may have been just as good at the start of the format, um, but was it like is it better now? Is it worse now because more people are playing it? Um, so this is also the schedule of the winner of the recent X9 tournament. Genius VGC is his name. And these are all the teams that he played against in the tournament. And you're going to notice a couple of repeats. There, there are 6 copies of this Lapras Zacian pairing. And like, did all of these people like decide to bring this combination? Because like it's not a very obvious combination looking at the metagame. Actually, some of these people are friends. So if you look at Fevzi and Face, the top 4 and top 2 opponents, they had the same exact team. They worked together. They directly influenced each other, like building this team. And if you had like known Face, you might have known that they thought these Pokemon were good. Pokemon is a social game. This is sort of like the core of a metagame, right? Some Pokemon are good at sometimes, and then others at worse times. That's not something that people who play chess or poker or rock paper scissors really have to deal with. These sort of like social problems. And so this is another thing, like getting feedback. I think everyone here has probably asked someone else um, for help on a team. Uh, and like the process of doing that is sometimes strange, you know? So you put together a team and you ask a couple people, you're like, what do you think of my team? Like it's got a Kyogre. And the first person might say, that's a great choice. You know, use the strongest Pokemon that are available to you. The second person might say, well, I'm not so sure. You know, everyone knows Kyogre is great and people are going to be ready to, fight it. And maybe the third person says, I've tried Kyogre and it just hasn't worked out for me. Um, and so the question is here, like, whose advice do you take, right? Like, who's like, it's not, it's on you. It's on the team builder. It's not a black and white problem. It's really subjective. Pokemon is a really subjective game because all three of these people are offering very valid advice, and it's up to you and your principals to decide what to do with it. Um, So in this sort of sense, like Pokemon is sort of like an art like Pokemon team building, right? It's sort of like an art critique. You make a team and you're gonna put it in front of people and you have to figure out how to like take their feedback, how to like make it work with what you know. Um and like you have to think about what they think is good. Um Pokemon is an art, maybe. I think it's kind of like strange to say that, in light of how technical the battling is. But really, it's very like subjective. Um, and it's definitely more of an art than a science. You know, nobody has the secret sauce for making a team, um, in every format. They make teams that feel good to them. And that's how they find success. So, I mean, the difference between team like Pokemon and art is that you start with team building, and then you do go to this evaluation stage, which uh, is is sort of like the sink or swim part. But the team building can really it can make you more comfortable during battling. That's what the team building step is all about, and like that's why to me working in small groups is so important and just getting feedback from people integrating it into what you know um, I think is sort of the secret to being a better Pokemon player, and it's not something that gets talked about as much as sort of the more technical aspects of the game. So that's sort of my spiel to kick this off. But you didn't really come here for my spiel. You probably came here to hear me talk about Series 8. Um, and my experience in restricted metagames, which is a little bit broader of a category than just one restricted, the Series 8 that we're dealing with right now. Um, and this is how I try to think about these. And again, I just did a whole spiel on how Pokemon is a subjective game. So this is my opinion. Please don't take it as a fact, um, or live or die by this, but this is just my perspective and you should maybe consider it. Is that restricted metagames are bucketable. And I'm going to go over what I mean by this term, but this is sort of talking about centralization. Um, so, when you pick certain Pokemon and there are other strong Pokemon in the metagame, your Pokemon on your team are going to have to fall into place in a certain way. So what I mean by that is if you pick Groudon on your team, and you know that Kyogre is very popular, but you really just want to start with Groudon for whatever reason, like maybe Groudon's good too, right? The rest of the Pokemon on your team are going to fall into place in a structured way to deal with Kyogre. Um, what I mean by this is, sorry to throw a bunch of Pokemon at you. These are the top 16 teams from the North American International Challenge Championship. International Challenge is an online tournament. International Championship in 2019. So very large tournament, and you can see it's a restricted metagame. There you get two legendaries on your team, and you can't Dynamax in this format. But just roll with this. So what you tend to see is that teams in these metagames end up looking very similar. And so if you like count count this all up, Ultra Series, yes. If you count this all up, I tapped out to look at the chat, and now I need to tap back. Okay, yeah. If you count these all up, these Xerneas Groudon teams look very similar, and there are six of them, and they're all structured in a pretty cut and dry way. If you actually like go through this image and look at them, there are four Rayquaza and Kyogre. There are two Xerneas and Kyogre. There are two Rayquaza and Kyogre. Oh my God, I have Rayquaza Kyogre there twice. That's so funny. How did I miscount that? It's uh, I don't know. It's something. It's Kyogre and Xerneas, I think, is the one that I wanted. I don't remember. Anyway, so like if you look at these, right, like these are the very similar teams, and they're all falling into place in the same way. And this isn't because all of these team builders woke up on the same side of the bed and was like, I'm just going to copy, so and so's team. Like they dropped a nice rental code. I'm going to copy it. Um, uh, these people probably all went out to build teams and ended up with these same Pokemon. Or worked together, but they probably ended up with these same Pokemon separately. Um, and that was just a function of the very strong Pokemon that they had on their team and that were floating around in the metagame. This is an important image to me. So this is my matchup preparation for the 2016 National Championships in Columbus, and I did well at that tournament. And it was also a restricted metagame, but in Gen 6. So you had the Primals, but you didn't have Lunella and Solgaleo. And you had Dark Void. And so things were very, very rigid. They were very centralized. And so I sort of sorted all of these buckets into like the frequency that I thought I'd see them, the like how afraid I was of fighting them. Um, and most of the teams I played against at this tournament fell into one of these categories. Um, so the distinction I'm making here is that an archetype can be really fluid, right? Like if you played in Series 7, you probably were familiar with Thundurus, Urshifu, and Nihilego. Um, and that was sort of the team, right? Like they had common partners. They had Clefairy. Um, but these weren't set in stone as much. If you like what I'm talking about is like it's very set in stone. Maybe one Pokemon changes. Uh, like you don't really have very much wiggle room, or you're going to lose to some common threats. Uh, and yeah, so like I would also say like a core is kind of similar to an archetype. Um, so I don't want to be hasty about like deeming this, right? Because what I'm talking about is like it's very, very rigid. It's not fluid at all. And fluidity is something we've come to expect from Dynamax metagames. Like Series 7, you could roll up with a bunch of different teams and they could all look very different. And very rarely two teams were alike. And we don't really know that much about Series 8. It's just starting, and we've had one medium, small size grassroots tournament. Furthermore, be really careful about reading too much into grassroots tournaments that have a tight knit population that's playing it, especially if you see a bunch of friends in the same cut. It might tell you something about the population. And furthermore, Series 8 is different from other restricted metagames. It's one restricted, and there's Dynamax, so maybe this doesn't apply. However, this this image is a little hard to analyze on the screen. But this cut had sort of this buckets thing going on, which is why I'm really talking about it. Um, And that to me is a sign that we're headed towards a centralized, restricted metagame. So there are 8 Lapras and Zacians, and a couple of these teams, were built by friends, but they all look pretty similar. And I can't really highlight them because they're all over the place. But yeah, there's also Kyogre and Tornadus. So I can't highlight anything. You can't see my cursor, but the person who won the tournament had Kyogre, Tornadus. What is it? Which one was it again? Yeah, Kyogre, Tornadus, Incineroar, Regieleki, and Amoonguss Kartana. And so did like another person or a couple other people. Actually, they played a mirror match in round 2. Um, so that could be, people just copying and pasting the same team, but it could also be people coming to the same conclusion separately. There are also some Dialga teams and Solgaleo Spectre teams. Okay, I don't know. Sorry for the slide. I don't know how I got to 12 Lapras Zacians. There are not 12. But, they do look the same. And they are sort of falling into the same categories. So just watch out for that. So yeah, so when metagames start to centralize really tightly like this, there are a couple of things that I think should be kept in your mind. First off, if there are some threats, how does your team match up against them? You need to know this. Like if I were to play in a tournament this weekend, I would want to know expressly, like how do I play against Lapras and Zacian? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? And two, how do I play against like that Tornadus, Kyogre, Kartana team? What in particular do you have to pay attention for? And so if you're using a team that is in a bucket, which is not a bad thing at all, right? So if you're using a team that's in a bucket, you came to a strong conclusion on your own terms, or you found a rental team and it clicked for you, and it's strong, right? There is no shame in using a team that's strong, even if other people are using it. But you do need to consider a couple of things. So how popular is the team? Like how many people are playing it? Like how prepared are people going to be for it? Again, these aren't bad things. You just need to know these things ahead of time. What makes your team different? Again, not a requirement, but if you focus on that, you can know what people might expect and how you can sort of like twist the knife and subvert their expectations. And how do you feel about playing a mirror match? So if you were to go into a tournament and play an exact, 5 or 6 mon copy of your team, how would you feel about that? Because if you aren't ready for that, you might want to use a different team. But just consider these possibilities. You should also know what buckets are your toughest matchups. Every team has bad matchups, especially when a lot of teams are really strong. That especially applies to restricted metagames. So you want to know this ahead of time to know what you have to do to like sort of play from behind and win that game. Cool. So at this point, that's sort of like what I had. At this point, if there are any questions in the chat, I'd be happy to answer them. But if there aren't, we can move on and talk about the group work that's going to happen tonight. It's okay if there aren't questions, or maybe the delay is bad. How do you feel about Toxicroak? Toxicroak could be okay. It's better for countering Kyogre than with Kyogre, but it's really frail, and so I'm not sure if the typing is worth it. I used Toxicroak in Moon Series, and it was really helpful to be a poison type there because of Xerneas, and Xerneas isn't as popular right now. Do you think Xerneas has a place in the metagame with Zacian running around? Yeah, I think Xerneas is the strongest Pokemon that's ever been made, and so I think it would be a pretty big mistake to count it out. Oh, do you see my Xerneas right here? Yeah, he's chilling. I think it would be a mistake to count it out. On the other hand, nearly every restricted Pokemon running around is Steel type or Ho-Oh type. So I would be really concerned about that. I certainly wouldn't start with Xerneas. I would start with understanding the popular teams that people are bringing and why they're bringing them and how they match up against them, and then see if Xerneas has any place in that. Why was everyone on the Tornogre train and then everyone just used Zash and Lapras? I don't know. I have a couple theories. A lot of the people who used Zash and Lapras were friends and worked together. So they all rolled up with the same team and thought it was a cool combination. I don't know if they like if there was like people going from group to group and talking about it or like saw it on the ladder or something. I don't know. I didn't watch Adi's video, uh, but I do know that lightning rarely strikes once. So it's not a bad thing when two different groups come up with the same thing at the same time. It's usually a sign that that's really smart because, people are thinking about this game like a lot. Um, Geez. Yeah. So, I don't know. Yeah, but I think both Tornadus Kyogre and Lapras Ashen are pretty good right now. Okay. Um, Cool. I remember Adi in one of these videos mentioned that he felt the current format was much more similar to 2014, with your Mega being much better than all the other Pokemon on your team. Do you agree with this assessment? No, because of Dynamax. I mean, 2014 was a really weird year, which I don't think a lot of people in this chat have the context for. There was a lot going on in 2014. It wasn't just Mega Pokemon, although they were a big part. There was Talonflame, and I guess the rest were like Mega Pokemon. Yeah. Oh, there was Smeargle too, but that wasn't until like people were too honorable to use Smeargle then. Um, I think Dynamax really decentralizes the power in a way that's like, okay, you don't have to max Kyogre, you can max Kartana. Um, yeah. Okay. Palkia could be okay. It doesn't do much other than its typing. Um, if you want to run weakness policy, Solgaleo is it better to run just Metagross instead. Solgaleo is really strong. It's beefed and it can trick room. Okay. Oh, there's a lot going on. So how can someone new to the scene hope to do well with all these friend groups creating teams? Yeah, it's a good question. So I think I would I actually think about this a lot. Like if I were new to the scene, like how would I get to where I am now? Like, I probably wouldn't have so many opportunities in front of me. Um, so I think what you like the best advice I can give is to that people don't make friends for the sake of like being friends with people who are good at Pokemon. Like it's usually the case that people like are friends and work together. So I think I would find people who have some like who you like talking Pokemon with and have similar mindsets to and just work closely with them. Um, and you'll find that you'll get good quickly. Or yeah, and just have fun with it. Um, and pay attention to what find people that you think are good, and learn from them and try and take things away from their play that are more than just like what they're doing in front of you, if that makes sense. Because like I could sit here and just like tell you things about like series 8, right? Like I could do that, and like I could just like give you a rundown, like I could build a team in front of you, um, and that would help you. It would like you would get ahead in Series A, and you might like do okay at a couple tournaments. But then when Series 9 rolls around, like you're gonna need me to make another one of these videos. Um, like I would just like try to take away like the like not meta as in meta game, but like meta as in like overall skills from better players. Like what makes like like Audie's videos so good, or like the team building that Audie's group does like a cut above some of the other teams. Um, and that would also be how I would approach it. And also like team building stuff, like that's why we have these seminars. Okay, let me scroll up. So, occasionally in a restricted metagame, the metagame will centralize more drastically to the point where only one or two incredibly strong buckets are popular. Do you think there's a chance that this will happen in this or an upcoming format? If so, how does one start building to counter these teams? Okay, cool. Yeah, so people don't really like, I mean, people have mixed feelings about centralization. I love centralization because like to me it's a really interesting problem to like have like really strong teams in front of you and then try to like stand out in all of that strength. But I think people get really frustrated with like metagame or the imbalance of power or playing against the same team every time. And so my advice, which I think sort of, I mean, my answer to your question, and I use this line a lot, and I think like Katz and Alex have heard this a couple times in the past couple of days. Um, how does one start building to counter these strong teams? Great question. To think outside the box, you really have to know what the box is. You can't build a counter team or I also hate the word counter team. We'll get back to that in a sec. You can't build a team that's strong in a metagame where there are very strong threats without knowing what those very strong threats are. And when I say knowing them, I mean you got to know them backwards and forward. Because if your team that's strong against Kyogre doesn't beat Kyogre, it's not strong against Kyogre. Um, and so like for me, that is playing with those teams and learning those teams and like watching good players play with those teams, and then going back and thinking about like sort of like the weaknesses in those teams that I can exploit. um, a really easy trap to fall in these things is like, okay, well, a whole bunch of my opponents are running Tornadus and Kyogre, so I am going to add, I don't know, like some weirdo like niche counter Pokemon to that composition for my team, um, and then I'm going to beat them. Um, and what you quickly find out is if you like work really hard at like beating one specific team, you quickly find out that like not everyone's running that team, or some people run small changes on that team. So really, I think it's about finding something that is strong in its own right that exposes a weakness in a popular team, which is a very hard thing to do. Cool. Wasn't that X-Ray in 2016? Yeah, that was X-Ray in 2016. I actually beat X-Rays in 2016 by not bringing either of my restricted Pokemon because, they worked to beat. They had a whole bunch of random counters for Groudon and Xerneas, and I said, okay, I just won't bring them. And then I just beat them with Cresselia and Bronzong. Okay, so where do you see this meta at the end of the month? I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. Do centralized metagames eventually lead to some wacky or counter meta teams emerging? Yeah, I mean, centralized metagames tends tends to separate like people out, if that makes sense. People can get pretty frustrated when the teams look 70% the same, 80% the same. They can get really frustrated. And maybe they like don't show up for a series. The ones that do and don't want to run that, you can get out there. But like I said earlier, like if your team is supposed to be strong against Kyogre and it's not actually strong against Kyogre, you're gonna be Kyogre food. Um, in terms of like specific Pokemon, like I I can't tell you. You got to try those things out for yourself. Where would you start building? Like I have absolutely no idea how to play in restricted formats. Yeah, it's a great question. Like for me, so like despite what I've said so far, I haven't played very much. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna spend a few days like looking at the strong teams, and like playing them for myself, seeing what's strong and what's weak, seeing what I win really well against and lose really well against. Not well, lose really poorly against. And then sort of uh, like figuring out what I think the strengths and weaknesses are, and then I might try that out for myself, you know? And so that's my plan. Um, whether or not that's a plan that'll work for you, maybe you want to just like pick one of those and get really good at them. Um, yeah. I hope that help is useful. Cool. So maybe let's start the seminar then. Um, because I've been talking for long enough. And if you have more questions, we have a questions channel, and you're totally free to ask away there. Let me pull up my slides again. Okay, cool. So the group work plan. You've been put in a small group with about 3 other people. Uh, I'd like for you to chat with them. What do you think is strong in this metagame? What have you seen so far that you think is good? What would you like? What do you think? Like the emerging archetypes, the emerging buckets, if you think things are that powerful, what would you say that those are? And for each bucket that you make, um, does the supporting cast have to look a certain way to cover for the weaknesses of the main Pokemon? And I think that's a really important thing to identify. Like for example, one thing that I've noticed is that there aren't any Kyogre without Tornadus. That's weird. Does the supporting cast of the Kyogre Tornadus teams like have to look the same way to cover for what's like for to cover for Kyogre? That's a question that I don't have an answer to. So you might want to talk about something like that. And is there anything that you can't put in a bucket that you think is strong? Like you think just strong generally? Share a team with the people in your group. It can be a full team, something you've worked on, maybe want some feedback with, or you're proud of and want to show it off. A partial team, so maybe you got stuck on the way, or even just an idea for a team, like, hey, I think this Pokemon and this restricted Pokemon are great together. And take turns talking about each person's team. What do you like about it? And what do you think could be improved, or especially because we're coming at it from this angle of intense centralization, what do you think the team might struggle with, or can it be fixed? So do some best of 3 practice battles. Talk about the games afterwards. Uh, did your teammates make any cool decisions that really helped them win the game, or did their team allow them to do anything good? Because the decisions that we make at the team building step really allow us to perform in battle. Um, yeah, cool. So question, will this be uploaded somewhere? Yes, I'm gonna put this right on YouTube. Um, after I download the VOD because I almost didn't save it. Um, yeah, I think that's it. That is it. Cool. So thanks for coming. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the questions thing of the channel. Otherwise, you've all been assigned to groups in the Discord, so meet your group mates and start chatting. I'll drop some teams that I think are strong too in the Discord, so we can chat about those as well. Peace out. Thanks for coming.